Welcome to Soul Code. I'm Andra, and this is Lorilet and Monegro. So she said, "What are we going to talk about?" I said, "Surprise! I'll let you know."
People probably think we staged this. I have not a clue what we're going to talk about, but okay, go ahead, Andra.
So we were talking about like shows that we're doing and everything. Lorilet and myself are both international best-selling authors. So I started shows so that we can really celebrate authors because they put a lot of work into that to put, their heart and soul into this and put it out in the world. But Lorilet and I are all about supporting women and really building communities and putting good stuff out there. So I think that's what we're going to talk about tonight, what it means to really put good stuff out there, to tell the truth and know them all the truth, right? So we might not be for everybody, but at 58 years old, I've come to the points in my life where I don't need outside validation. So as long as I'm okay with who I am, that's all that really matters. So we do come out here, we do speak the truth. And Laura, I know you're the same girl that you're sitting there saying, uh-huh. So we come out here and we try to share things that we're going through and we're working on and we see happening in the world because we're in really strange times in the world right now, right? With everything that's happening in the government, society with that perpetual stuff telling you you need, you need, you need. And some people are out there feeling like they're falling short. And I just want to tell you, you're not broken. You are fine just the way you are right now in this moment. So, Laura, how do you feel about
Yes.
that?
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is that we are born whole, but we kind of come up with these weird beliefs and agreements that then send us to a totally weird place. And it's not a pretty place, which is why we end up needing therapy and we need all kinds of supports to find ourselves and to work with ourselves. I mean, it's quite unfortunate that we're not more positive um, because it stems from that. It stems from this idea of somehow putting out your light. Because if we were more willing to embrace the concept of love as a universal truth that it is, and as a motivating agent, then we would see that change is possible for everybody, but also we would see that we could just be love. We wouldn't have to be all of these other weird things. I think it's an internal battle, but it becomes internal because of how the external factors make us feel. We get weird messages sent our way constantly.
I agree with that 100%. And I think a lot of it, when we talk about generational stories, people that are abused often become abusers, right? So because we do talk about that whole nature nurture
Mhm.
environmental issue, and I think that they're both equally as important, right? That nature and nurture are a culmination of who we become. So if you hear that you're not worthy or you need to be successful, you need to get married, you need to have children, you need to go to college, right? And it kind of makes you feel like you are not okay just as you are and that you're not whole. And as Laura said, we are born whole. So the idea that we have to look for external validation to fulfill something we were born with is kind of bizarre, but society keeps perpetuating that fraud, right? So, and you have all these people on social media that probably shopping the hell out of that, those pictures, sharing all these things about what they're doing. Now, some of them may be real, but it makes other people feel like they're somehow failing. Why not me? Why can't I have those things? Or and anybody's really capable of having anything they want, but you got to get your head there. So I told you I did a show last night and it went live, right? And I was so tired. I can't even tell you. I didn't know we were going live, but I did. So um, would they asked me if I could tell anybody one thing, one word of advice in health, what would I tell them? And that was what I said. Stop looking outside of yourself. Because the more we look outside of ourselves for validation and answers, the further we get away from who we really are at our core, right? So when we're talking about getting healthy, it is about looking in and internalizing and unpacking all of those different parts of us, the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, the physical. So they're all parts of who we are as humans. And if any one of them is out of balance, you're not well, right? So if you're emotionally broke or you're spiritually unfit, right? Or you're physically unwell, right? Something's going on with you mentally where you feel like you're failing in some other area, right? And there's usually some area in our life that we feel like we're falling short in. It might be our relationships, it might be in our vocation, right? It could be in our health. And because we feel like we're falling short in there, that because it's not our area of expertise, if you will, in our life, we somehow break away from the other things that are important. We focus on the one we're failing at instead of the ones that we're succeeding in, right? And it starts to unravel. When you look at people that have gotten to a place in their life where they're not happy, where they've put on that weight or they've, walked away from a relationship or a job after several years, it's usually from some unmet need that they feel like they're not fulfilling, right? So, we were talking about addiction also too before the show, and addiction comes in so many different forms. We have the sex addicts, we have the scrollers, we have the emotional eaters, we have the binge drinkers, or the alcoholics, the addicts. There's so many different forms of addiction, and some of them are classified by society as very normal. Like if you're a people pleaser and an overachiever, society doesn't have any problem with you. But if you're an
That's true.
alcoholic or an addict, oh my God, you're that fall down battery drunk, right? And I think, society picks and chooses what is acceptable and what's not, which leaves the people that don't fall in that linear path feeling like less than. And I think that we have to start adapting that live and let live attitude, right? Because there's a lot of people out there hurting. There's a lot of unresolved trauma in society, and it is showing up in health. We've never had such a high rate of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, right? So all those things stem from stress and trauma. You know, stress is another form of trauma to your body, right? So, what do you think about all that?
I think that the lifestyle that by design has been created in the US is totally conducive to the results that we're seeing. This is why it's not due to chance. It's not due to chance. If it were due to chance, you wouldn't have such high numbers of prevalence of all these different issues, right? If we think about it from statistical point of view, we should all be highly concerned and we should all be demanding a complete overhaul of everything around all of these different issues. And the idea that this is happening by chance should be totally eliminated from our mind so that we can then start searching for a true why of all of this. And we will discover there is something in here that is by design. And whatever that design is ultimately is definitely not beneficial to the humanity that it is impacting.
It's greed.
But
The
what we,
design is greed.
what we can do is really work on ourselves, and actually that overhaul that I'm talking about, since it's not coming from an external power, needs to be more about reclaiming our own power, and more desperately needed than ever in anyone's lifetime is a total call for awakening of the self. And that awakening of the self cannot happen if we don't forgive ourselves. We have to forgive ourselves because part of that reckoning requires us to pick up the pieces of whatever wounded parts of us is somewhere in some closet or somewhere in some ditch. We need to go ahead Stop whatever it is that we've been doing that has led us to whatever it is that's disgusting, horrible, shameful, sad, or whatever other term we want to put. And say to ourselves, you know what? I got to pick myself up and forgive myself because here I am beating myself up, hurting, eating the wrong foods, drinking the wrong drinks, not doing what I got to do. That means I have let go. And so, my personal thought on this is that while we have all these external forces, we cannot continue to give our power to the external. We need to awaken the self. We need to say, listen, I want to reconcile with myself, but that reconciliation cannot happen without forgiveness. And I'm not preaching some religious anything here. It really has to do with that very basic level, but very difficult space of realization, which can be pretty painful in itself. But, we've come to the point where we get used to being beaten up so much that we forget that we're valuable and we keep ourselves in that closet or in that ditch instead of picking ourselves up and saying, no more. Enough is enough. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to stop eating this way. I'm going to stop. I'm going to use a word here, whether you got to bleep it or not, half-assing my life and realize whatever I have left from whatever number of days I've lived, just take your age and multiply by 365, which is the equivalent of every day of 1 year, and go ahead, figure out how many more, if you double that, if you get to double that, how many more days you have left. And stop wasting your time doing stuff that's just benefiting some weird conglomerate of things that have no interest in your well-being. It's obvious.
I agree with what you're saying, but value comes from within. So if you don't perceive that you have value, so like I just did a book on addiction, right? And it talks about a lot of people that suffer from addiction are amazing caretakers in other areas of their life. And maybe it's because they need to control some portion of their life because they feel uncontrolled, right? And they become these amazing caretakers because they weren't taken care of. And you really can't give love until you really feel that love for yourself. And it took me a long time to figure that out, right? Because I was brought up in a way where what happens in this house stays in this house, and where we kept everything to ourselves. So I always kept everybody at bay, right? And it was easier. It was easier until it wasn't, right?
Yep.
So
That's why the conversation for me is we need to stop. It's don't
yeah,
make a
we
move.
do.
We
We
need to
need to
stop.
stop and we need to start getting in touch with ourselves. So when you think about reflecting, right? I ask my clients questions all the time, right? Because a lot of them think they're failing or they can't achieve some of the results that I tell them they're going to be doing with me. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. So I always show them all the areas of their life they've been successful in. And I say, well, you have a great career, you're a great mom, you've been an excellent wife. So you have all these achievements over here. Why do you think you can achieve this small thing over here? Right. So society sets people up to fail. And I
Mhm.
don't care who agrees with me and who doesn't. The truth will set you free. Right. It does.
Well, anyways, we're just speaking our truth and point of view, even myself. I'm just voicing how I see things. People could go ahead and disagree with me. You don't
Yeah,
have to do it
all
my
they
way.
want.
You have your opinions, I have my own, and I hope we could respect that, right? So we're
Yeah,
just expressing our
I
truths,
respect other
but
people's
but meaning we're
opinions
just
as well.
expressing our truths. We're not telling
Yes,
people what to do.
but society is setting people up for a fall in with these unrealistic ideas of what beautiful
True.
is. You got to be a toothpick to be beautiful or sexy, or you have to have voluptuous boobs to be a woman. It's really ridiculous, and it's I don't know who made these ideals, of what the perfect woman or is, or what body type you should be living in, but it's obscene. because people are um looking to that like that's the perfect, and they're falling short. And where we have this idea of, if what rich is and what poor is, and how people or should be treated, right? Based on where they come from, who they are, what they look like, what social status they're in. And we have to kind of draw a line in the sand where everybody's equal and it's all about love and everyone's brother and sister out here, right? Because if you, unless you have a really bad relationship with your siblings, but then that's not really going to help, right? But if you could treat the people that you meet on a day to day like they are your family, because we are all connected out here, whether people choose to believe that or not. It's my internal belief that we are all connected, right? That there is something greater than us, and I'm not talking about religion here either, but there is something greater than us. I mean, we got here and all this stuff was here. So somebody created all this, right? So I just think that we need to stop checking out, as we've talked about on another show, because we are checking out. We are letting people control our outcomes and our
Yeah.
health, right? We are one of the sickest nations, and we're supposed to be one of the
That
wealthiest nations. And to me, that's just horrifying, right? That we're supposed to have the best medical care, but everybody has something
don't.
wrong with them. Everybody's sick, and the numbers, like Lorilet said, doesn't lie, right? So
It's by
it
design.
is by some design these things are happening, and we have to make an active choice to speak out about it and to decide that we are not going to let our lives slip away quite that way, that we are going to check back in and start honing
Pay
in on our
attention.
body and listening to those signals and calming our nervous system and really being okay with who we are, right? Because everybody's beautiful, right? Everybody's beautiful. Who am I to say someone's not beautiful, or that, who am I? Who am I to judge somebody else, right? So I'm nobody. I'm just Andra, right? So I'm not better than or less than anybody else. So we have to stop with all the judgments and the outside validation seeking, and start thinking about self-love and self-care and wheeling it back in. Start owning who we are, and own your own story. So, Laura, I'd
Mhm.
like you to close this out with a final thought, and then we are going to say nighty night.
It boils down to self-love because everybody will have their own opinion, even if those opinions are not kind. We can't control opinions, but the first self-talk starts within us, and we might be our own worst critic. So I know that probably removing these negative interactions is likely not going to happen. But what we can do is mend our own self love and our own relationship and self compassion and awareness so that we can then say, you know what? I got to do more loving things for myself. It's not about anybody else validating, affirming, or rejecting or doing anything for me or on my behalf because my life is my own and I got to choose to create a world of mine that actually represents that which I think of. And that means if we think of love, if we think of kindness, if we think of well being, if we think wonderful thoughts, and we also share that out into the world, I always say what you'll do is you'll glow. You'll glow.
Okay, so we're gonna go get our glow on.
That's right.
and, and we want to thank you for joining us as always. We hope you're enjoying this show. You can always like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if there's some kind of topic you'd like us to discuss, please, we're open to anything. Please just leave a comment in the chats. We'll be happy to do a show just for you. So have a good night. Take care. I'm Anjanette, and this is Lorilet Monegro.
Yeah.